Okay, so as it was with I believe the one about the Broadened Horizon video I did before, this was also something I did as a blog, and at the time I couldn't figure out how to get my computer to do videos again, so I sold the blog post, but I think I'll do it on here as well. And for what I'm about to talk to, or for the obliviati, I'll give a short introduction. There was this comic created by Alan Moore, a prick, even among comic creators, but it was a deconstruction story, and for it he created a bunch of characters. One of these was a character known as Rorschach, as a way to critique the beliefs of Rand objectivism and the beliefs of Steve Ditko. But that aspect of this character, as well as Alan Moore and Nerdsink's philosophical immaturity, isn't what I want to talk about. I wanted to focus on what I consider the best aspects of the overall character, of the best aspect of this overall story, which is not like, well, no, it is a noir kind of like detective vigilante, and specifically what I think makes him appealing and relatable. Or the most part, I want to say why I think people like him is what I'm getting at. Now, for the record, I am no expert on psychology or philosophy. This is merely me giving my opinion on a subject I feel strongly about. With that disclaimer out of the way, I will begin. Sure, Rorschach is the more violent of the vigilantes present in the story. Unlike the Question, actually, no, yeah, he is like, think the Question mixed with the Shadow. Raised by a single mother, which, that's a recipe disaster, who was, for lack of a better terms, a bitch that made money as a prostitute and wasn't reluctant in using violence against her own son if he did something that displeased her. This didn't exactly put Rorschach in the best of an environment. He had no real stable paternal figure in his life, or any kind at all, really. Often was the victim of bullies because of his mother's profession as a whore, and would eventually, well, yeah, he would snap one day and strike back at his bullies. Like, he bit one of their fucking ears off, in the movie at least. But, yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting to see that aspect of his background. Thankfully, he would be taken away from his mother and never see her again. I think this was for the best for him, regardless of how he turned out. I think this was for his betterment instead of a detriment. Regardless of this, the damage was likely already done. If this wasn't enough to break him, eventually there would be an event that made him turn a mite more violent. And actually, there were two events that kind of made him who he is as a vigilante. One was actually a real-world event. See, there was this woman, I forget her name, and I didn't write it down in the script either, because this is something I'm going off the cuff with. She was attacked at night, and people could hear her screaming for help. And a bunch of people in their house, they did nothing. It took them forever to finally get off their asses and go down and see what was happening. This is where we get the term bystander syndrome. I think Rorschach was pissed off by this event. It definitely shaped his perspective of people, probably. But aside from this, there was one other event that shaped him into the man that we know him as in the story. See, in the beginning, Rorschach was like Batman. He beat the shit out of criminals, but he would leave them alive for the authorities. This would change when a little girl went missing. He took on the case and eventually found her, but she was killed and fed to dogs by a piece of filth that I can't remember. I don't think they ever said the name of. If they did, I forgot it. And this caused our detective hero to, for lack of a better term, snap. Cuffing the scum and setting the building on fucking fire with the culprit still inside. He also killed the dogs who ate the girl's body, but oh well. I'm choosing to ignore that and put my love of dogs aside for now. After this event, whatever remained of his old self was gone. His real self, or his birth name, Walter Kovacs, he wouldn't even recognize it, or he hated being called that name actually, but as he put it, Walter Kovacs died with that little girl that night. All that was left was Rorschach. And I think that's when he said he realized that God doesn't make the world the way he is, people do. He said God didn't seem to mind what I did that night, just as he didn't mind what that guy did to that girl that night, or before he got there. He is described as paranoid and a sociopath by Ozymandias, although, given the certain things we now know about him, I find his judgment not that reliable. I would argue the latter of these, as he seems to be seems to me as just a rougher around the edges hero. Like, think Red Hood. He is, in essence, a noir hero. Someone who is a hero that does not look like a hero. He and Night Owl are basically the less insufferable of the vigilantes, possessing less bad personality disorders. Dr. Manhattan is detached from humanity. Silk Spectre is also a bitch. The comedian was... I don't even know where to begin describing his malfunction. And Ozymandias had an overwhelming ego problem. Compared to his contemporaries, I would argue Rorschach was more stable among the crime fighters. Like, the only thing you could really hold against him was he was kind of jaded, I think, and maybe a little cynical. Well, no, not maybe, but yeah, he does kind of remind me of how I once heard, who was it? He was a real famous detective noir writer. He said basically the noir detective hero does not look like a hero. He's the last person you would think to be a hero, but he has moral conviction. Which I will be getting to that later, but that is what Rorschach is. He is a noir detective mixed with a superhero. He just has no powers. While I don't hold him in the highest regards, actually, I take that back, I do, but in addition to this, I have to admire some attributes about the noir hero. Despite being a broken man, he is a selfless person to a certain level, and regardless of what people may say about him, this vigilante possesses a great deal of conviction. Like I said, I'll be getting to that. Despite what we desire to do, well, yeah. Wait, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Despite wanting to do the right thing, putting him at odds with his fellow heroes when he learns the truth behind the comedian's murder and Ozymandias' plan, he chooses still to tell the truth. Telling his close friend Night Owl as he attempted to sway him not to. He basically said, never compromise, not even in the face of Armageddon. And when confronted with the god Dr. Manhattan, he remained firm but accepts his fate, going out like the badass he was and simply telling his former ally, do it! And, he went out. In my eyes, he is probably the only real hero among the Watchmen. Ozymandias, he's actually the only other, like the three most interesting Watchmen. Ozymandias, Rorschach, and Comedian. The Comedian, he was a rapist. He killed a pregnant woman when she attacked him. Well, technically she worked for the Viet Cong, but I can't say I fall from there, but still, a pregnant woman. Ozymandias was willing to trick the planet into turning on Dr. Manhattan in the movie and convincing him in the comics of an alien invasion to unite them so they wouldn't be etching towards self-destruction and fucking Armageddon. He's like a tragic hero, basically. The Comedian, I don't know what to label him as. Maybe anti-hero? Rorschach, to me, is a classical hero in some senses. He has a classical kind of moral compass. It's black and white with him. He's kind of like the Punisher in that regard. He is a good person, I would argue. It's just, he's seen some shit. And when you see shit go down, it affects how you act as a person. Now, the stuff I've seen in real life pales in comparison to some of the stuff that other people have seen in real life that haunts them. The only thing that's haunted me is my parents' divorce, and that was basically because they were acting like assholes during the whole proceeding. That was the most traumatic thing I ever had to put up with. That in college. God, was that a waste of time. But anyway, you see that and it changes you for better or worse. I would say it changed Rorschach for the better and the worse. I would say he is the most heroic of the Watchmen. He is the one that I look at and say, I respect him. I feel nothing like that for Night Owl, Silk Spectre, or Dr. fucking Manhattan. Ozymandias demands a certain level of respect, because he was at least willing to do this for the sake... Then again, this guy did have an ego issue, so maybe he thought, I think it's a good idea. See, among all this, Rorschach is the real hero. He is the one who wants to do the right thing. Again, goes back to the noir thing. The noir hero always does ultimately what he believes to be the right thing to do. Simply put, Rorschach was, as I mentioned, a damaged man. Born into an environment that did little to help his mental development, provided the ideal breeding ground for a sociopath, but despite this, he was not a monster. He was capable of forming bonds of friendship with the second night owl. He was being very moral and conservative, but not too conservative, regardless of how you feel about the latter. Yeah, just keep that in mind. Back then, conservatives weren't as well, no, they were worse then. But anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked. But he was very moral. He possessed a great deal of self-awareness, and unlike most people I can name, he possesses conviction, which I admire. Staying true to what he was until the very end, and perhaps in the end, he got the last laugh. He still won in the end. To the very conclusion, he was true to who he was, and perhaps the most admirable member of the Watchmen. And I'm sad we don't get more of him. There's probably comics of him, but yeah, then again, I still need to read the original Watchmen comic. I've only seen the movie. I want to read the comic. Like, I don't like Alan Moore, but I will say the fuck out of this. Some of his comics look interesting. Like, Watchmen is the only thing he's made I want to read. That and V for Vendetta. Like, I don't like Alan Moore because, well, I kind of think he's a cunt, if I'm being perfectly honest, but still. He crafted probably the best, like, of all the characters he crafted for this story to destroy superheroes, basically, Rorschach was the best one. And it's funny because he made this as an indictment of the beliefs of Steve Ditko. If anything, this, I don't know, ratifies it. It vindicates it. In some measure. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it, I suppose. You'd actually have to research Steve Ditko's politics to see what I'm getting at, but, and also Rand objectivism. But, yeah, no, Rorschach, he was the most intriguing of the Watchmen. The other ones, I would say they didn't have it as bad as him. And he still rose above it. And he still acted like a hero. And unlike the other fuckboy McGee's of the group, he actually was willing to stay the course and do what was morally right. Now, granted, the other Watchmen, they had a good case too. If they didn't go along with Ozymandias' plan, all those who had already died would have died for nothing. But, yeah, no, fuck them. I side with Rorschach on this one. And again, he got the last fucking laugh in the end. Or I believe it's hinted out. I can't remember if his journal went public or not. I think I heard it did because there's like a comics timeline where it went public and there's a... What was it? The Watchmen TV series timeline, which from what I hear is a goat fuck. Like I have it on DVD and I still refuse to watch it. But anyway. I think it's all in this. I've kind of gone on a tangent on some points, and also the script was kind of fucked up. I think I might have done a better job of editing it on mine after I printed off this copy. But, yeah. Rorschach, good character. I would not want to meet him in a dark alley after I pissed him off. I'll leave it at that. Have a nice day, and remember, pray for sanity.